Hey there, everybody. Before we get in our lesson, I want to encourage you to follow In My Opinion in your Bible app. This is what it looks like in the YouVersion app. It's a 15-day plan. It's 5 days per week for 3 weeks. It follows these lessons and it really dives into verses that deal with how we speak. And that's what we're learning about right now, how to use our words to bring healing and life to others. And so, as we start out today, I want you to think of a time where you spoke up about something and it ended up being awkward or embarrassing or hurtful to someone else. Because I know I can think of a lot of times where I've done that. I put my foot in my mouth where I don't mean to, but I end up doing more harm than good. For example, I'm really into baseball, and I've seen a lot of the stadiums around the nation on TV. Let's just be real, on TV. And so I was watching a Houston Astros game back when I used to like them. That's for another time. And Minute Maid Park used to have this berm that went up in straightaway center field, where instead of being flat to the fence, it actually raised up to the fence. So it went from level field straight up like that to the fence. And you could see players falling all over this. And I shared on Facebook one day, I said, what a terrible design. Players are getting hurt. They don't like it. Whoever designed this had no clue how to design a stadium. Apparently, well, come to find out, one of my friends actually helped design Minute Maid Park in Houston. And believe it or not, he saw the post. And David, if you're watching, I apologize profusely again for that. That's just one example of many. And I'm sure you could tell some stories. Because I bet you've been there where you don't have bad intentions and you say things that cause hurt or embarrassment or awkward. And that's the danger of sharing our opinion, because our opinion can cause awkwardness, embarrassment, or hurt. And those stories come to mind, and it makes you wonder, is it even worth speaking up? Is it ever okay to speak up? I want you to think about those awkward moments and how bad and painful they can be for yourself. And I think as bad as those moments are, they're actually not the moments when we fear speaking up the most. I think the most often is the place a lot of us run into when we fear sharing our opinions with our friends. Now, maybe you're like, nah, man, I can share anything. I can share anything with my friends. I can share anything at all. Well, I'm not talking about everyday stuff, just stuff you share with your friends. I'm talking about the hard stuff, the difficult stuff, the stuff that makes speaking up or speaking out complicated. I mean, think about the last time you saw your friend making a bad choice. Maybe they were hanging out with the wrong crowd, a group of people influencing them to do not so great stuff. Maybe they were dating the wrong person and you and everybody else knew it. Maybe they were dating a person who was pressuring them to do things they shouldn't be doing. Maybe they were disobeying or disrespecting their parents, lying or arguing or getting super angry at home all the time. Or maybe you see them stop caring about school or friends or homework or anything. I remember back in middle school, I had a friend who was a high achiever in everything, in track. Everything he wanted to do and went out to do, he was a success at it. But there came a time when he just stopped caring about everything. So maybe you have a friend like that. Or maybe you knew they were watching shows they weren't supposed to, trying to skirt around parental controls, watching inappropriate content on the internet or on social media accounts. I mean, those decisions happen all the time. We've all been there, right? We've all had a friend do something or be on the verge of something that we know is really, really, really not good for them. And when that happens, if you're anything like me, you probably want to say something. You feel like you should speak up, but you're not sure what to say or how to say it. In fact, you might not be convinced that you should say anything at all. And I think most of us would say that we felt this tension before. Should we say something? If so, how do we say it? So I want to go through some different scenarios here. A couple of reasons why we might not speak up. And I just want you're there just watching this video by yourself. I'm not there to see your answer or anything. I just want you to knock twice on the table, the table, the chair, your leg, whatever. Knock twice on the thing in front of you if these things are true. If one of these scenarios is true, just knock twice. Ready? Knock twice if you've convinced yourself not to speak up because you felt like what your friend was doing was just not a big deal. Knock twice if you didn't speak up because you told yourself, I don't want to ruin the friendship or make my friend mad. Knock twice if you didn't speak up to a friend because you thought, what would I say? I've done the same thing. I would just be hypocritical if I told them my feelings. Knock twice if you've avoided speaking up to a friend because you felt it was none of your business. It had nothing to do with you, so if it didn't affect you, why should you speak up? Knock twice if you've convinced yourself not to speak up to a friend because you thought, I don't think they'll listen anyways, so why should I share? Knock twice if you didn't speak up honestly to a friend because you know that you're not supposed to gossip, but it sort of feels like gossip. And even if you did bring it up to them, wouldn't that be the unwholesome talk sort of thing? And finally, knock twice if you avoided speaking to a friend because you thought, I've already told them what I think. Do I really need to tell them again and again? We've all been in situations where we know we should speak up, but we make excuses for why we don't. And while I think it's normal to feel that way, we're going to learn today that that's probably not the best choice we can make. Now, let me pause here and say this isn't the case for all of us. Some of you have no problem speaking up. That's my story. I don't have any problem speaking up. My problem is shutting up, just being quiet. So if you're like me, you're not shy at all to share what you think. Well, if that's you, don't check out because trust me, what we're about to say is for you too. Because when it comes to speaking up to friends in situations like this, we all have problems. We all have hang-ups. So maybe for you, speaking up is a struggle. And you constantly question if it's worth the risk. Or maybe speaking up comes easy, but you probably don't always offer your opinion in the nicest way. Either way, there has to be a better way to speak up and share your opinions when we think they're helpful to someone we care about. This issue, this question of finding the right way to share our opinion is not a new one. About 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Paul wrote a letter to the church in a place called Galatia. And part of the letter addressed this very issue. Paul wrote this letter because he cared for the believers in Galatia, in that church, and he knew they were trying to figure out the best way to live. He knew they were trying to figure out the best way to speak to one another, and he knew they were struggling. Because sometimes knowing how to do that can be confusing. So that's why Paul put pen to paper and why he helped his friends out. So take a look at what he wrote in Galatians 6, chapter 1. Dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by some sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back onto the right path. Now, even though Paul wrote that letter a long time ago, I think we today in 2020 can learn something from this. And it doesn't matter if you've heard this before or this is your first time hearing it, we all can learn from this. See, Paul addressed this passage to fellow believers because they were his friends. He loved them. He cared about them. He cared about what happened to them. And because of that, he didn't want them to choose to hurt either themselves or others. He cared about them. And I think you can relate to this too, because you care about someone else. And when we care about someone else, then we want what's best for them. We don't want to see them hurt themselves or others. And sometimes that means we have to speak up when we see them heading in the wrong direction. So what did Paul say to do? According to this verse, when we see friends who are struggling with things that might hurt them, or they're moving down a path that's destructive, where they're going to harm themselves or others, it's important that we do what we can to help them get back on the right path. And a lot of times that includes speaking up. Now, I get that speaking up is hard for a lot of us. Like we said earlier, there are a lot of reasons why we don't speak up and why we think our friends don't necessarily want to hear what we have to say. We're afraid it'll hurt their feelings or upset them or damage the relationship. But I think in situations like this, when our friends are walking towards something that's really bad for them, we have to live out this truth. Pay attention to this. This is one of the most powerful things I've ever heard in my life. And the truth is this. We have to care about that person more than our relationship. You got that? We need to care about that person more than we care about our relationship. We have to care enough about our friend that we're willing to speak up, even if it means our friendship becomes a little bruised in that process. And that can be a hard thing to do. So to start, try this. Put yourself in their shoes. Like if you're the one walking that path towards something really bad, would you want someone to tell you? Would you want a friend to stop you, help you, point out what they saw had potential to hurt you? Would you want them to have the courage to have a hard conversation with you? I know I would. If I was headed on that path, I would love to have someone, as hard as it may be, to say, Josh, stop. Can't you see what's happening here? This is harmful. This leads to nothing good for you. Oh, how I wish there would be someone who cared enough for me in that moment to tell me what is good and to avoid destruction. And you might be the person in someone else's life to have that chance to be that caring person. You have the opportunity to speak up and help them move back toward the right path. Now, like we said, there's some of you who are like, no, I'm not afraid to speak up. That's not my problem. I even kind of like telling people when they're wrong. Is that you? You like telling people, you're on the wrong path. You need to straighten up, mister. Well, I want you to look back at the verse again. Because Paul didn't just tell us to help our friends get back on the right path. He told us how we're supposed to do that. And here's how: with gentleness and humility. See, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. You need to speak the truth, but you need to do it in the right way and with the right heart. Paul says to gently and humbly help your friends that you see are struggling with going down the wrong path. Well, what does that look like? It means speaking with kindness and love and encouragement instead of anger, frustration, or judgment. It means caring more about the person you're speaking to than about the fact that you're right. And even as I say that, I'm convicted myself. That person matters more than the fact that I'm right. So speak up and do it with kindness. Be helpful, be encouraging, be loving. In other words, use kindness and love when you speak up. When we approach tough conversations with love and kindness, it will change both what we say and how we say it. And we'll speak up because we love others and we want what's best for them, and we do it in love, using words to encourage, rebuild, and help our friends get back on the right path. So remember, use kindness and love when you speak up. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you think you need to speak up, I want you to ask yourself a couple things. Number one, what does it look like to love my friend and show kindness in this situation? Maybe it's in the way you talk to them about it. Maybe it's about the actual words that you use. Maybe it's about the gentle tone over a harsh one. Maybe it's choosing to talk about it only with that friend instead of with everybody else. And maybe it's simply agreeing to pray with them or offer continued encouragement when you see them making good choices, or reminding them that you love them no matter what. Maybe it's not saying anything at all until you can figure out a way to say it in a gentler and humbler way. Whatever it is, before you speak, consider what it would look like to show the other person love in your conversation. Put yourself in their shoes. Number two, if this was you, would you want someone else to talk to you about this situation? How would you want them to talk to you when they did? In other words, how would you want someone to show you love and kindness in that conversation? Think about that. And try to do the same for the friends around you who need your love in the same way. So this week, keep this in mind. Use kindness and love when you speak up. Well, that's all for now. Look forward to checking in with you this week. If you have any questions, just DM me over our Instagram at SBCYouthVA. But until we talk again, love God, love life, love others.